Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager, and I get to be the host today. Today, our episode is sponsored by Lunatic Fringe Yarns. Unique yarns for unique people. Check out their website. It's lunaticfringeyarns.com for a whole line of beautiful, beautiful yarns and lots of gorgeous colors. We will take questions. Oh, excuse me. We will take questions today, as always. Please put them in the the Q&A, and not in the chat. I can't see them when they're in the chat. And we will get to as many of those as we can toward the end of the program. Today, we have the one, the only Marcy Petrini. She spins, she weaves, she knits, she occasionally dyes. She has been an incredibly well-respected weaving teacher for years. A lot of her weaving work is to make samples for her teaching and writing, but she also liked to produce unique materials, unique pieces to enter exhibits, and she's entered many in her day. She has taught at the Craftsmen Guild of Mississippi for over 38 years. And in 2016, she was recognized as the Guild bestowed upon her the Lifetime Achievement Award. She first began teaching at Convergence in 1969, and she will be teaching again this year at Convergence in Knoxville. She has been the feature writer of Right from the Start in HGA's Shuttle Spindle Dyepot magazine for the last 20 years. She has taught throughout the US, and she's always looking to expand her teaching. So now she's actually added Zoom programs to her teaching. Hey, Marcy, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Good. We're so glad you're on here today.
What is it, what?
We are so glad you're here today.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and thank you to you and Elizabeth and Mandy who help us out, and Lunatic Fringe with all those wonderful Mansell colors. Some of them are on my loom right now.
There you go. What is your favorite tea, or are you a tea person?
Well, I'm really an espresso drinker, but occasionally I do drink tea. When as a kid, my grandmother used to give me chamomile when I was not feeling well. So my friend went to Peru and she brought back this wonderful tea. I don't know if you can see it. It's manzanilla, which is chamomile, but it has cocoa in it. So you can beat tea with chocolate in it.
Oh, perfect.
So I am drinking it from a Lunatic Fringe cup. I don't know if Michelle remembers giving me that cup. It says IB Weave from a long time ago. So that's the tea that I'm drinking today. I'm running out. It came from Peru, actually. A friend of mine came back from Peru and went to Peru and brought it back. And so I'm running out. So one of those days I'm going to have to find another source. Or maybe I'll go to Peru and see if I can meet Maximo Laura. I love his work. So that would work.
There you go. I'll go with you on that one. That'd be great.
That would be a great
trip. So how did you get started in weaving?
Well, actually, like many fiber people, I started out as a kid because everybody around me was doing something. My aunt had been a tailor in an atelier before she got married. And of course, this is the 50s, so women didn't work out of the house. But she still had few clients, but she sewed a lot of my clothes because she only had a son. So I was the person to whom she gave her teaching or her sewing expertise. And then all the other women, this is my dad's side of the family, they were embroidering, doing all sorts of other needlework. Also, I grew up in Italy, as I said, in the 50s. And one of the things that they did in the schools, and this was Rome, I don't know if it's true now, if it was true in other places, but part of our education was to go to field trips to museums. And Rome has got a lot of museums. And one of the things that I fell in love with was those gorgeous gorgeous tapestry, which I thought they were embroidered because everybody in the family was embroidered of some sort. Yeah. And my mom's side of the family, my mom is Lithuanian. She ran away from Lithuania when the Russians took it over. Does that history repeats itself? So the Vatican in Italy actually maintained consulate for all the countries that had been occupied by the Russians. And so they had a get together for the Lithuanians that were in Italy. or specifically in Rome. And the ladies wore their national costumes, which for a small country were actually a lot of them. And all their garments were just gorgeous. And there too, I thought they were embroidered, but there is actually a tied weave they're called Thai Lithuanian. And that's all of their decorations that looked embroidered was actually tied weave. So it was years before I figured out that the tapestry were woven and that the Lithuanian garments were actually woven with Thai Lithuanian. But what I think I really, really, truly made my love for fiber was my grandmother, who had lived through a couple world wars, and she was very careful with her fabric, and she would mend everything. She would mend woolen socks, she'd be knitting them, sheets, she would reweave them, and her mending was so exquisite that you couldn't tell that it had been mended. And so I guess she never said anything, but the feeling was, if fabric is that precious, it's worth pursuing, you know, so it's worth doing and collecting. And so I learned from her, I learned hand sewing, just sewing and embroidery, and my neighbors knitted, so I learned a little bit of knitting. So over the years, I just kept on accumulating things. It wasn't until my mid to late 30s, I guess, that I actually started weaving, that I had the opportunity. No, it must have been late 20s that I actually had the opportunity to start weaving.
Where was the first place you ever wove? Did you take a class or?
The I was at the University of Rochester, and there was a gallery that was offering classes, you know, for credit. And so I took a year-long class there. Well, it was divided into structures. Actually, it was, you know, plain weave and introduction, and then twills and so forth and so on. So then shortly thereafter, we moved away from Rochester, but that was a good foundation of, to get started there.
Oh, that's great. Way to go, Rochester. Good on you.
Yeah, and I never joined the guild because I left, but I do know that they have a wonderful guild. Because
they do. They really do.
Yeah, so.
There seems to be a parallel between science and you, the scientist, and you, the weaver. Can you talk some about that parallel?
Yes, actually, that's a very good point. I think that both of them, for me, is learning. It's kind of like a puzzle, and learning more to put it together. So when I started weaving, there were things that were confusing. Double weave, basket weave, shadow weave, waffle weave. Are they like a category of weave, like twills, or what? And of course, as I learned, all of a sudden, I was able to put those weaves in place, but also learned that, okay, so shadow weave and waffle weave can share a pointed twill. You know, so that kind of putting it together. And that's very much what scientists do. I mean, I think we've seen it through the pandemic, where people are slowly putting the pieces of the puzzle together. At the beginning, we didn't know much. Well, we hardly knew anything about it, although there were people that have been working on SARS type viruses forever. But as we learn more and more about it, we're able to have a vaccine. We're able to know, that actually touching, you can't get the virus by touching unless, of course, you rub it in your face. So that's the parallel, that you learn pieces and you put them together to make a puzzle of what your thinking is about the subject.
Well, you've created, speaking of puzzles and pieces, you created on your website Pictionary, and here's a page from that. And first of all, can you explain a little bit what Pictionary is and how that works for you? And then talk about how you came up with this great idea.
Well, the Pictionary actually is pretty much what you see there. There's a single page for every structure that I could think of. Actually, there's some more that need to be added that I kind of got put on hold because of Convergence, but because I'm working on Convergence seminars. But so each page has a drawdown and a picture of the fabric. So I had to weave all of them if I didn't have them. And some of the samples I had were pretty old, so I had to reweave them. It was kind of fun to do them. And so you have the draft and the drawdown. and what it looks like, and a little bit of a description of what it is. So this is not meant for you to look, say, oh, a bench twill, and know everything there's about bench twills. Of course, that's not the point. But the point is that you can at least get an idea and see what, whether you would like to pursue it. And there's other, things that you can look up, videos, and well, there's actually Robin, I think, is on it. She had a wonderful video on twills. So it's like a dictionary with a picture. Obviously the ones that don't have the hand manipulated don't have a drawdown, because they're basically usually on plain weave, but everybody else has this. And the way I come up with is that I know you will identify with this. Student shows up to class, oh, look, I found this picture, or now it's on the web. I found it on the web. Or it's crackle. It's on 8 shafts, and I don't have 8 shafts, but and they make a pillow, and I really want to make a scarf, but the thread that they use is too small, so I want to use a bigger thread. Hello, that's not what you do with crackle. So I started writing some things up so people could get an idea of these things. And then at some point, Sandy Bowles, who's the previous retired editor of ss&D, also she was executive director, at one point asked me if it would be possible for me to write one of the articles. I was writing right from the start, way back then, an article that basically was an overview of the weave structures, because that would help the readers in kind of a summary. And I thought, well, the descriptions probably wouldn't do a whole lot of good. So we need pictures and drawdowns. And so I wrote an article, and it was a long time ago. I forgot whether we used pictures and drawdowns or both or what. But then after that, I started kind of keeping these pages. And then a Convergence, probably 6 years ago, I thought, well, let's see if people are interested in this. And this will give an overview of structures for people that may be interested in that. And so I finished up a whole lot of the structures and taught a seminar or presented a seminar on the Pictionary, and people were pretty enthusiastic. And I had a couple people say, where was this when I needed it, when I started weaving? I was like, well, I actually still use it, so if I want to remember how to thread puck, well, I have that memorized, but about, something, I can look it up, or I'm bending twills, so I can look it up. It's all 4 shafts. And I'm thinking that maybe at some point I might do something with how you go from 4 to 8 and all that, but I'm thinking about it. Nothing solid yet, but there are a few that I've actually woven that need to be added, so they will after Convergence. There is life after Convergence.
Well, you're a professor of medicine, or you just retired, professor of medicine at the University of Mississippi, and you also a well-respected teacher in weaving. So what is it about teaching? Because it's really your life. It's like you're always teaching something. What is it about teaching that's such a passion for you?
Things, actually. One of them is that I really think it's important to pass it on. It wouldn't do us any good if we all did all this and then, it all disappeared. I mean, I'm already finding that some of the older weave structures sometimes are not really well known. I'm in a study group where some of the folks are digging out some structures that are not in the common usage. And so that's really interesting, because we really need to make sure that people know about them. But also, I find that if I can explain it, I can understand. Oh, I should say, if I really understand it, I can explain it. And the explaining may be in person, which is ideal because you get feedback from people, or in writing. When I write the monographs, usually for a class, I always have someone read them first, so that by the time I get to class, they're a little, they're better. They're cleaned up. But that allow me to sit down and think about what I'm going to be teaching. The blog is usually something that it's rattling in my mind and I need to get it out. And if I can solve the problem, then I can write a blog. And I really enjoy writing for ss&D. Sally is great. She's unlike the other things where they're pretty much driven by what I think, with Sally, we go back and forth, and she has an idea, I have an idea, we talk about it, we kind of sort it out, and I think the product is better than the sum of the parts, as they say. So, but the fact that that helps me understand and helps me find where the holes are, but also that there will be someone else that will benefit from it. And
Yeah, for those who don't know, she's referring to Sally Orgren, who's the editor of the Shuttle Spindle Dyepot. Hi, Sally. I know you're watching.
Sally, right? Yeah, and the teaching work was the same way, and there is a parallel because obviously I was teaching pulmonary fellows in medicine, and obviously that they wanted to know what they're learning. And when I teach the weaving, the students. The students are there because they want to learn how to weave. So it's so it's a parallel, adults wanting to learn as opposed to teaching third graders. I don't like to learn
this. So you gave a lecture, and I read about it on your website, but I'm not sure where you gave the lecture. But it was so cool because you did a royalty theme, and you said the king is plain weave and the queen is twill, and we're showing this GAMP because it has both plain weave and twill in it. But can you talk more about this, and how did you come up with this designation?
By the way, that's lunatic French yards. I mean, just by coincidence, but I love colors. I love the colors because they go with the Mantel system. Well, I don't remember saying that. I don't doubt that I said it because it sounds something like I was. But if you think about it, some of the qualities. The king is sturdy, solid. You have maximum interaction. Every warp intersects with every weft and vice versa. And also very versatile. You can have weft face to warp face and everything in between, and perfect tabby in the middle. So that's what you want a leader to be. The queen is the twills. I mean, of course, I know you can weave twill rugs, but to me, it's, those flowing scarves that reflect the light, and they have wonderful drape. And so that's the idea, the thought. But really, if you think about it, they're the foundation of weaving. So if you think about plain weave, besides the things that we just talked about, you have all what Emery calls the rectangular flow weaves derived from plain weave. All your canvas weave, all your lacy weaves, they all come from a foundation of plain weave. I joke when my students make an error under plain weave on the very first thing where they skip a thread, and I say, oh, you just make a hot float. I mean, that's where they come from, right? And then the twills, I mean, big class of twills. Then you have overshot or other supplementary weft weaves where you actually put the two together, plain weave ground and twill superimposed to it. If you look at the unit weaves, they either have a ground of plain weave or sometimes a pseudo plain weave with basket weave. And if you have more shafts, as more 4/8, you can have the ties organized in a twill, or the pattern shafts organized in a twill. So they're all over. The only thing that may be different, that it doesn't quite fit that, and it's not that far, is satins. They're not truly a twill, but they can be imitated by a broken twill. You need 5 shafts for a satin, and they are in a different class because of the way the interactions are. But nevertheless, I mean, they're not that far in terms of thinking about them from twills. So if you understand the king and the queen, you pretty much have everything covered.
That's great. I love that. And I'm ashamed to say this because I teach beginning weaving, but I never thought in terms of how kind of everything starts with plain weave and you go from there. I mean, I always tell my people that weaving is nothing but over and under, over and under.
That's it.
And it just goes from there. But I never thought about how plain weave is, you know, you just kind of change it, and all of a sudden, like you said, you got a float. Oh my gosh, it's a new design, yay. All right, when you it seems like artists either have this great innate ability to understand color, or they work at it and they explore it and they, you know, really look at it. Where are you on that continuum? Because you have a lovely sense of color. You bring the most unusual colors together and they work so beautifully. And so we chose these two because they're just so pretty. So where are you? The one on the left is the red gradation, and the one on the right is the deflected double weave. So where are you on that continuum? Do you think it was something you were just born with and you got it, or what?
Both. And I think that that's true for a lot of people, whether they recognize it or not. I'll tell you a little story from our Weavers Guild, the Chimneyville Weavers. We used to participate at the Natchez Strays, the Craftsmen Guild used to have a festival. We used to have a children corner where somebody in our guild got meat trays, clean meat trays from one of the grocery stores, and our energetic guild members warped them. And then we'd have all these trays out of yarn, you know, inexpensive yarn. We had all these trays ready, different colors. And then we'd have a bunch of different colors yarns. And the children could come in and they would pick whatever tray they wanted, and they could pick whatever many yarns they wanted to weave them with. And the way we had all the supplies in the middle and the children's around. And actually the area was fenced in. It had been something in the Natchez Strays, maybe for horses or something. But anyway, so we're sitting there and the kids were doing great until mothers, and I don't mean just a single mother, but mothers would come in and start telling the kids, oh, you can't put the two colors together. They don't go together. Finally, one of our guild members, I think I was the president, basically said, okay, we're going to fix this, because they said the mothers, you know, parents could not come in. And so what we did is we moved the supplies on the outside and the kids on the inside, and we just let the kids do whatever they wanted. And it was amazing. They had a great sense of color. So I think that most people are born with a good sense of color. Never weave a baby blanket with a soft pink or a soft blue. The kids can't see that. You give them a bright orange and red and a bright, you know, purple and green. But then, you know, they get mothers like that. They say, don't do that, you know, we could tell that some of the children were timid because they would say, what color can I use? And then we'll say, what color you like? Well, I like this. We'll go with that. Sure. Do you think it goes with that? Yeah. Okay, then it goes with that. You know, and so we try to get them. But so I think that that's what happens. Now, it is true that some people are more intuitive than others. I mean, actually, Myers-Briggs, you know, all the thinking about how you take in information. But we all had the experience of knowing something and not knowing how we know it. So that's part of intuition. So I started out as a kid wanting to put orange tops with my pink flowers shirt, and my very elegant mom. Remember, this is the 50s, so women did not wear wild colors. The psychedelic 60 hadn't arrived yet, but you know, she let me, and as I did all my different fiber things, I never really thought about color. It wasn't until I got in Seattle, I learned, as I mentioned, I learned all the different structures. So just using contrast was enough. I got to Seattle and I did join the guild there, just wonderful guild. And they were there, and I was still taking classes, and the classes were really organized around products. So we, you know, took a rug class, a garment class, and their color played a very important thing. And so I thought I should take a color class. So I took a color class from Peg McNair, tapestry weaver. And we went through the Albert's book, you know, with color aid paper. And I remember specifically doing a sample that had green background with a red square on top, and it just popped. I just loved it. Well, shortly thereafter, we moved to Jackson, Mississippi. And so I thought, red and green, Christmas. I made a red, green warp, red weft, put it on the table, a low brown. So all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, there's something here I don't understand. So I started to try to get a handle. So I started reading about it. I started trying to figure it out. And the problem was that the more I read, the more confused I got because there were all these rules. And rules are okay if I understand them. I mean, rules may be okay for other people. I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but I have to understand what's going on. So I had kind of two breakthroughs. One of them was that I fell in love with Jim Davis stripes. He's the artist from DC. He died probably 30 years ago. And he did those wonderful stripes, usually paint, but also glass and other media. And I'd seen one of his work early, then later I saw and really tried to figure out how does he figure out these colors. They don't follow any rules that I know about. They don't follow the Fibonacci series incidentally either, but because I studied that too. So I finally found a book that was a retrospective of his work, and he and our critic asked him, how do you plan the stripes? Do you do mock-ups? How do you choose your colors? And his answer was, oh, I just paint whatever paint I have in the studio, and I don't plan more than 3 stripes ahead, and most of the times I don't even stick to those 3. Okay, hello, intuition. He has such, and he wasn't even trained as an artist. He had been a writer before he started on this script. So, and then, I analyzed skeins of people that painted or dyed, and they don't follow any color. So I finally said, okay, enough. I'm just going to go back to just thinking about the ways I did as a kid, just trying. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to have to figure out why. But then the real breakthrough came when Terry started photographing my work. And I would look at the picture and say, Terry, this picture is gorgeous, but see the piece? The colors aren't the same. What's going on here? And you print it, it's even more different. So Terry, being the scientist, went on a rabbit hole of neurophysiology of color, and he dragged me with him. And then all of a sudden, once I understood how the brain works in getting color, then I knew why red and green can look either vibrant or brown. It's the way the brain can discern the colors or not. You get color blending and all that. So once I understood it, then the rules make sense. They don't even need rules, So I'm a happy camper. So now that's what I do. If I'm unsure, I just look at the colors and do a little bit of analysis on it, but most of the time I just try them, and they work out pretty well. But I think most people have to trust that they actually have intuition, and they just have to let themselves go and not remember when mom told them that this red and blue don't go together.
Yeah, that's the way it was with brown and blue. I grew up, you cannot put brown and blue together. And to this day, it's still like, it's okay. It's okay.
That's fine. Just fine.
Okay.
Well, and brown is purple, and blue is not too far from that. So you're good. You just trust your eyes and your brain. Your brain is doing all the work.
Well, you talk some about how during the Renaissance that artists and scientists were often the same people, that if an artist could also do a lot of exploration in science and kind of like what you were saying, is trying to figure out why things work. So, but what do you think is the relationship, at least for you, between the two? You've kind of talked about that already. But what is the relationship between science and art?
Well, a couple of things. People don't realize that a lot of science, in fact, has a lot of thought process behind it, which is not all that different than ours. So there's a lot of creativity. People think of the mad scientists and mixing little vials together, when these days it's shoving a sample into a big complex engineering construct. But you still have to pick the sample. But I think that just like we sit down and think about what we want to do and how to accomplish what we want to do, what fiber will be the best, what color we want to choose, what structure. And then we finally go to the Loom and Weave It. By the time we got to the Loom and Weave It, we pretty much just solved most of the problem. Oh, we have to pay attention to the details, keep the beak, salvages and all that. Well, the scientists do exactly the same thing. They sit there and plan and figure out what tools they need to solve the problems. And then they do the experiment. Now, when they do the experiment, they also have to pay attention. They have to make sure that the timing of the reaction is correct. They have to make sure that they are sampling what they're sampling and all that. So it's really a parallel. And as I always like to say that in the Renaissance, it was usually the same person that was studying science and art, and there wasn't really a division there. So. And in this program, there have been several people who were guest artists who were actually had some kind of science background. So yeah, so I think it's and I think much more maybe than paintings or pottery or some of the others is that there is that structured aspect of weaving that as it's like a structural aspect of science. So you have to make sure that you stay, you set it correctly, that you slay it correctly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. I find that there's people who they just want to make something, and that's wonderful. I get that. I love just making things sometimes, but then sometimes I want to understand and I want to explore and I want to, and that's that's what you think of when you think of a science, that exploration, the understanding, the figuring it out, and you do that so beautifully in when you teach.
Well, thank you. But actually, there is a parallel there too in science. I had a friend who got a degree, and she wanted to be a lab technician. And she said, and I said, well, you could become a faculty member, you get grant. She said, no. I want to be at the bench doing the work. I don't want all those other bureaucratic stuff. And so, and that's parallel to the people that say, okay, this, I can do this. Okay, I don't like that green, I'll change that to purple. But they will, they sit at the loom and weave. And like you said, we all have done that in the past or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that makes you happy, yes, go ahead and do it. And so this gal had a PhD, she could have gone, but that's what made her happy. And she said, yeah, I'm going to make less money, but I don't care. I can sit down and do what I do. It'll be done well, and it'll, be a contribution, and I don't have to worry about the bureaucracy. So that's
that
parallel as you can get.
I get that. Well, we're going to look at 3 of your works here. One is Cannelle, the other is Rusted Hills, and the last one is a Plated Twill Purple. Beautiful. So which is more important to you, color or pattern?
Well, they actually work for each other. So I, kind of depends on what I'm thinking of weaving. I may start with a yarn, and you can see, like for this one, the back is, the warp. This is more warp dominant, and this is more weft dominant. So start with a yarn, and I want to showcase the yarn. There's not a single answer, but I want to find a structure that will showcase the yarn in a way that will make both of them better. And conversely, I may start with a structure, and I may think, okay, what is going to make that better? So in the Cannelle, I actually learned this from Norma Smeda, who's going to be coming. See at the end. Yeah, she's wonderful. I wanted that Cannelle to stick out, well, not stick out, but I mean to be prominent, so that I had some red ribbon. So I needed a background that was reddish, but that wouldn't detract from it, so that the Cannelle could be, so now you can see the back of it here. And so that's another thing. This is not one of my favorite pieces. I was playing with it. It's got 3 different twills, and these are kind of mixed colors. I like the big stripes. The middle stripes I don't think are, well, they're not as successful, but still, I mean, I wanted the twills in the different sections to showcase the yarns. And but if you look at close up, I think it's better than the picture that's taken far away that Terry took. But I mean, it's not his fault. I mean, I had to take a picture of the whole thing. But you know, it's a learning thing. So sometimes when you mix yarns, they don't look as good as you think you might. For the twill. I mean, it's not that I don't like the colors, that I don't think it does a whole lot for the structure. So this one you can see the structure, this one you could see the structure, and this one it kind of gets lost in the color. So they go hand in hand.
Well, speaking of color, the next one that we're going to look at is called Rainbow in the Dark. And this was done during COVID. So how did COVID impact you and your work?
Well, I started out being naive. In fact, I remember in the Convergence 2020 feed on Facebook, you know, people been worrying about, you know, was HJ going to cancel Convergence and all of that. And I kept on thinking, well, you know, people are going to do the right thing and keep their mask on and social distance, and this thing is going to go away. I'm very Pollyannish. Well, it didn't. We all know the end of that story. But one of the things that, you know, originally happened, in fact, I was teaching, we interrupted a twill class that I was teaching at the Craftsmen Guild. And I told the ladies, there were 5 ladies, I think, I told the ladies, well, we'll just, you know, a couple weeks worth of stoppage here, and then we'll pick it up. Well, sooner or later it became obvious that that wasn't going to work. So I thought, okay, well, other people are doing Zoom, we should be able to do Zoom. So I started Zooming, and it's been kind of for the work, it's been kind of like the silver lining, because I taught seminars and programs to guilds all over the country, and I taught seminar to ladies that were as far away as England. And so, you know, I wouldn't have run out to England to give a seminar. I mean, and so that has made it possible. Our guild has met on Zoom, so we stayed in touch. They've done wonderful jobs of trying to get programs, you know, that could be done online. And then I have a study group last year. I have a small group of friends that we get together and talk about our work now. So there's, well, of course, this program, and other museums have programs. So there's been really a lot of things to keep us from being isolated. But what happened to me was originally, I got really depressed when the deaths started mounting, especially since at that time was mostly healthcare workers. I mean, they were my colleagues. And then, of course, people in nursing homes who got caught, you know, the people, you know, healthcare workers brought it in, and, you know, they didn't have any place to go. They didn't have a chance to isolate any more than they already were. So that piece that was up is called Even in the Dark, There is a Rainbow. And so it was a particularly bad day. It was the highest number so far that had been in Mississippi that day. It happened to be a really gloomy day. And you could probably see that I have windows, you know, coming out that look into the yard. And so I'm sitting there looking at these numbers from the health department and looking outside, and it's totally gray and it's totally depressing. And then this rainbow pops up. And so I thought, okay, even in the dark, there's a rainbow. And so I had to weave it. So I ended up weaving that. And then I did a whole series as I've taken a break. I'm hoping that's the end of COVID. I am holding my breath, so to speak. So that given me a chance to kind of get those feelings out. And I did a little booklet for our holiday instead of Christmas cards. I said a little booklet of my pieces. And some folks thought it was depressing. I thought, I mean, I wasn't always depressed, but there were times I was, you know, because of the deaths and what was going on. And you know, okay, Terry and I used to joke and say, oh, it's Saturday night. Where are we going dancing? So we may do, but I'm hoping it's coming to an end. I'm certainly looking forward to Convergence.
Oh, aren't we all? Aren't we all? Absolutely. Well, you've done extensive teaching. Before COVID, you've traveled, you've gone to other guilds, you've gone to other conferences. So you have seen a lot of different looms, and I'm always curious about this. So what are the factors, do you think, are a sign of a good loom? What makes a good loom? And what is your preference? What do you like?
Well, right now, can honestly say that there's no such thing as a bad loom on the market. There used to be, like back in the 80s, they're gone. I mean, I used to have a couple lemons, no more. So it really is, it's what you want to weave. It's what you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's what you can afford. So I actually wrote an article for ss&D right before one of the convergence saying, this is what you should look for in a loom. You know, it's a decision thing. It's like asking, do you prefer a pot or a skillet? I mean, it kind of depends where you're going to cook, right? So I have my favorite little loom is it's not so little, 36 inches, but is the one that Terry built me when we first got married. We took money that our relatives has given us for a wedding present, and Terry bought the wood and some of the hardware. You know, you can't make wreaths. You can make wreaths, but they're, you know, we're not going there. And he built the loom, and then you know, I've been using it ever since. It's probably the only wedding present that I still use after all these many years. The following year, after Terry built it, we wrote a Christmas letter to the family saying, "Oh, this is what we did with the money you sent." And my mother-in-law let us know that some of the relatives were really upset. Hello, you don't get it. Okay, so that's the loom. That's 4 shafts. And Terry built it from Seaver's looms plans. I don't know if they still have the plans, but I think for a while they were selling looms. I lost track. I know they have a school up. I think it's in Michigan. Then the other loom that you saw some of the more complex pieces as an ABL, 40 shafts ABL that I use to make pizzas. Was I was getting ready for Convergence, and I'm going to be teaching or presenting a seminar on tied A-shaft tied weaves. I started, you know, making more samples and using my ABL, and I thought, this is crazy. I mean, I need this loom to do, you know, more than just a little sample. So I bought a pup, A-shaft pup, and I love it. And it's easy to, you know, retie, and I keep on changing that, long warp, and doing different samples. I also have a rigid heddle. My friend Kathy Perito was teaching rigid heddle classes, and she was convinced that I would love it. And I said, oh, I can weave on my loom, on my 4 shaft loom. He said, yeah, but you can take this by the, you know, outside. You spin outside, you take your loom outside, or by a fireplace. That's exactly what I did. So what I really like about the rigid heddle is that it can make softer cloth because you don't beat it so hard. And also it's really good for interaction of color. So the first thing, if I'm trying to think about what's going on here, is you want to use plain weave because that gives you the maximum interaction. You know, think pointillism. And so then, you know, can take it from there. Then you can change it with twills or whatever. So anyway, so those 4 looms are home. I have a Macomber, 10 shaft Macomber, the teaching studio. I haven't been there for a while. We have lots of Leclerc in the teaching studio. I mean, in the teaching studio, and we have a couple other looms. So they all work fine. I mean, they all look great. And we try to get the students to move around and try different ones. But what happens is that they get to like one and they don't want to move. So, which kind of defies the point. But if somebody's looking for a loom, Convergence, here I come, go around and try them all. That I did a class, a seminar, Convergence, a few years back. I talked to all the loom, you know, the people that had looms there, and arranged for a time during the seminar. And they were more than helpful. I mean, they were great. They rearranged a schedule so that they could come and the class could try them and whatever. So that, I think you have to find your baby.
I remember that. That was an interesting class that everybody went and test drove a loom.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah.
It's the best way is go try it and see what you think. And you're right. I'm surprised. I really thought you would be no, this is the best loom. I love it that there are no bad looms. That's great.
It's kind of like the business about dressing the loom from the front to the back,
Oh,
which, I mean, I was taught from the back to the front. I was also taught by, I'll think of her name, that uses small threads, that it's better with small threads to go from the back to the front. I don't use small threads anymore, my arthritis and all the good things that happen when you get old. But I think if people are comfortable with the front to the back, it's fine. I mean, I love the way that Madeline and Susan go at it, just jokingly, clearly, tongue in cheek. But I've had, when I've taught a beginning class for Convergence in Michigan, and I remember Simon coming in and said, "Oh, how are you teaching them?" I said, "Front, back of front." I said, "Back to front, because that's what I'm more comfortable with. And so when you teach, you really have to be able." She said, "Well, that's good, because the other way is worthless." I said, "No, it's not. There's no, it's not, let's not be so dogmatic, because different strokes for different folks." So yeah, whatever loom makes you happy, that's the loom you should have. I would not recommend barred looms, however.
Yeah, that is kind of an animal of a different stripe.
Yeah, well, most of them are not in good shape. They were kept
yeah.
outside in the Mississippi humidity.
Yeah.
Termites.
Well, you've talked about Convergence, and you will be at Convergence this summer. You're teaching several classes, as always. But what else is new what's coming up for you? What's next?
Well, I am spending a lot of time thinking about I'm going to have 4 monographs to go with the 4 different classes. And so I haven't really thought much past it, except that some guilds have asked me to give talks to them. And I promised that it wouldn't happen, but it would have to happen after Convergence, which basically means next year. So I will be scheduling some of those. And but I will continue my little group of friends that we get together and talk about weaving and really just study structures and stuff. I do have to put up some new Pictionary pages, and then we'll see what the future brings.
There you go. Well, we've got some questions. We got a little time left for questions today. Okay. Somebody was asking the name of the pictures when we were talking about color, and I think they were the red. Oh, Joseph Albers. Yeah. No, they were saying what was the name of those 2 images, and I believe we were talking about the deflected double weave and the red gradations, and I don't know that there was other names besides that.
Well, the red gradation is actually I did write down things because I was afraid that people were going to ask me and I wouldn't remember, because I things. So I can look it up. So the red gradation is let's see. It's well, it's 10-2 from Lunatic Fringe and the Warp. It's doubled, a set of 12, and so it goes from yellow, red, 5, 10 red, purple, and 5 red, purple, and then cranberry. And the weft is an ash fur caterpillar yarn, color Inferno. And
wow!
So it's
good records.
It's
good records.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I try to keep good records, and then the deflected double weave is tencel and silk, and the pattern was adopted from one by Holly Brockman from Fabric Sickle Bump. Madeline, I think, edited that.
Oh, okay.
I use what she did. The yarns are different, but I mean that was the idea that they came from that. So,
well, you're a weaver. I mean, a spinner also. Do you spin and then weave it, or do you just spin for the heck of it, or?
Well, a little bit of both. I do spin. I do sometimes spin and weave it. And the softy spun or this yarn that does not have a whole lot of twist works great on the rigid heddle. So I've used it in the rigid heddle. I've knitted with it too. Right now, I am taking a little bit of a break and spinning some merino in multicolors, which I do want to use eventually for the Richard Heddle. But I was spinning yarns from the Shave 'em to Save 'em. And those yarns are pretty much all one color. So I'm gonna have to do some dyeing to do something fun. I have knitted I've knitted bears in the past, and kind of a pattern that I developed. So I knitted a bear. I'm knitting. Well, it's to be sewn with Shetland yarn, and that I spun. And when I told my friend Beth, she said, "Why a bear and not a sheep?" And I was like, "Good point." So I may have to actually develop a sheep little pattern so that I can make a Shetland bear or bears of the other fibers. That might be fun, but it's going to take a little time to do that. That may have to wait till after Convergence.
Well, Joyce Robard said she's from Rochester, and she said she may have been up there about the same time you were. So she was wondering, who is your weaving teacher at the art gallery? Do you remember?
Let's see. The young woman that was my first teacher left shortly after that. And I'm sure I have her name written down in one of my notebooks, on one of my 50 million notebooks up there. And then there was a lady who had a shop, Helen Bryan, or she died a few years back. I think it might have been an ss&D this year, passed away. So this was I took my first class in 1977. So I don't know if we.
Somebody said Helen Brown.
Helen Brown, yes.
Way to go, Edith Lord. Way to go, Edith.
Yes, thank you, Edith. Yeah, there wasn't Helen Bryan here when I first came here. She's deceased too. She wore tapestries. So I got them mixed up. Not yet. It's Helen Brown. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Thank you.
So if somebody was getting started weaving, what's the best recommendations what's the words of wisdom? The people that inspired you and got you started, what did they say to you that you want to pass on to other weavers?
Well, as I said, I wanted to learn how to weave because I was naive and thought I was going to weave those big tapestries. But I think that a couple of things. I mean, you have to find out what you like. And so take as many classes as you can up front so that you find out, it may be that you take your first rug class and you say, oh, I want to do this the rest of my life. Or you may say, been there, done that, move on, so you have to find, I think that your weaving becomes best if you do the things that you like. Now, I do think that you should once in a while break the mold, so it's what we were talking about Julia Cameron the other day. You don't want to dry the well. You want to get your creativity going, and you get creativity by doing other, things that you may not like when you do it, but then it's been there, done that, got some ideas. So I think that exploring everything, I would say joining a guild is really important. And if you live far away and you don't have a guild, then there's online guilds now. So that's that's one of the things that resulted from COVID, which is really good. I think that one of the things to learn is to decide whether you want criticism from other people or not. I know. I mean, when I remember the first piece that I did that was just the piece that I did on my own from class, and I brought it. It must have been Helen Brown. Looked at the piece and said, "Great pattern, but why did you make cardboard?" I'm like, okay, I get it, so, and I've used that line, but she was joking, I mean, she said it, joking and stuff, but I said that to people joking and they got offended. I've also had people wanting me to tell them, what was wrong with their piece. And when I looked at it and I offered some suggestion, they got mad. I think they wanted me to say, oh, this is the best piece in seamless light bread. So you have to decide that if you want criticism from other people, first of all, find someone who can give you criticism, because sometimes if they're not used to doing that kind of thing, when they say, oh, it's beautiful, it's useless. But you have to be ready for it. So it may be when you get started, you just really want someone to say, okay, your take up is a little too much. Maybe you want to arch your weft more, that kind of thing. But then as you progress, you want to do more and more. But if you start to weave, there is a full world out there. So you have to decide whether you want to try it all, find a niche, what do you want to do with it for, the rest of time. There's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that's one thing that I encourage people to take a look at, is that at Convergence this summer, and then also at our next online Zoom program, we have an open studio. And it's exactly what you said, is if you really do want to kind of go to that next level and you do want some constructive feedback, open portfolio is a great way to get some great feedback from people who really know about weaving and can give you that feedback.
Yeah, I participated the first one in a market, was involved, and I was one of the people reviewing. It was really interesting, coming from someone who doesn't have an academic background in fiber, but this was perfect, because this young woman really wanted to be a weaver and sell her work and that kind of thing. So yeah, so that's great. I am teaching a seminar on reviewing your own work at Convergence.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so and it goes, I do take it. I never know who's in the audience and like that, and so I take it from simple looking at your craftsmanship, to looking more at your design and your cloth together, to basically figuring out where am I going to do the rest of my life with my weaving kind of thing. So it should be fun.
Well, good. Well, I can't believe it. We're done for the day. We've been here for an hour. Hard to believe. Yeah, I could sit and talk for you whenever. This would be great.
Well, you and I can Zoom anytime.
We'll talk. Thank you so much, Marcy, for being here today. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you.
And y'all have to check out Marcy's website, it's marcypetrini.com. And a couple of people have been commenting this in the chat too, is that I don't know that there's anyone more generous than Marcy Petrini when it comes to helping you information. There is so much on her website, not just the Pictionary, all kinds of information. I don't know anybody who gives more of their knowledge than Marcy Petrini. So be sure you check out her website at marcypetrini.com. And again, she has places open in her classes. Someone else said that every year they come to Convergence, they make sure they take a Marcy class. So check that out if you're still thinking about what classes you want to take for Convergence. We also want to thank Lunatic Fringe for being a sponsor today. They have some interesting yarns you might want to check out. They're called Gevolve, and they have everything from linen. I was looking at them online. They have some wonderful sparkly stuff if you're looking to put a little pizzazz in your weaving. And the one I may have to check out myself is stainless steel. So if you like doing some weaving that has memory, these are some yarns that you might want to check out, and they're all at the lunaticfringeyarns.com. And of course, they have the best color gamps in the world. So check them out. And thank you so much, Lunatic Yarns. We really do appreciate your support. If you would like to sponsor Textiles and Tea, or your guild, or your business, please go to our website, weavespindye.org, and you can get more information about being a sponsor. And we also want to thank you for your support by becoming a member or donating to the Fiber Trust. A lot of these programs happen because of the donations to the Fiber Trust. And if you like these programs, such as the ones like travel and workshop that we just had, Spinning and Weaving Week. Those are all supported by the generous donations to the Fiber Trust and your membership. If you want more information, go to our website, weavespindye.org. If you've missed an episode and you would like to watch it again, or you want to share it with a friend, you can do so on Facebook. All the past episodes are on Facebook. You do not have to have a Facebook account. I know that's a problem for some people. You don't have to have an account. You can just go on and watch. We're also putting them up on YouTube, and I encourage you to subscribe. That way you'll get a notice when a new episode has been put up on YouTube. We appreciate you doing that. Some information, we got call for entries coming up. Grant applications today. You still got time. Get that grant application in. You can do all that online. We've got the Seasons of the Smokies, the wearable art. That's the fashion show. We've got the basketry, small expressions. Applications for the COE is coming up also for the hand weaving exam. So just a reminder of some events coming up and the deadlines for those. I mentioned last week that the publisher of our magazines having a little trouble because of the supply chain with paper and ink, but it is done. It is at the airport, at the post office. So they were mailed out Fridays. So some of you will be getting the magazines real soon. Some of us here in Georgia, it'll be a while yet. It always takes a while to get it down here, but they are in the mail and they are on the way. So thank you all for being so patient with that. We're very excited that next week we're going to have Angie Parker as our guest on Textiles and Tea. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again, Marcy. It was so nice to have you here. And I hope you all have a wonderful week and happy tea.